Hi, welcome back to our second segment of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
And here we go, and we're going to continue what?
Well, a few minutes ago, we just sort of began the topic of some of what happened in the City Council meeting last night. One item that was pretty contentious was this response having to do with the Foundry building.
Right.
Where basically, as best of my knowledge, what happened here is that the City Council took a vote some time ago, basically giving the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority the power, the authority to basically manage and find a solution and work toward a solution.
Can you back up a minute? Why do we even have control over the Foundry building?
Because the Alexandria Real Estate, as part of their concession to
mitigation,
zoning,
whatever you call that.
well, it was actually done quite voluntarily.
Really? They didn't have to?
Yeah, it predates any of this sort of more formalized mitigation procedure that's the council.
So what did they get in return?
Well, they got the zoning that allowed them to build the buildings that they really wanted to build.
Which are what?
Well, they build basically life sciences lab stuff.
Oh, okay.
But it's not exclusively. But so they want to do that, and as everybody knows, Kendall Square is sort of like the hottest market in the country for that sort of.
Seriously.
So they basically got their ability to build the buildings that they wanted to build, and they gave open land, which is now a big park. It's sort of grassing out right now, as well as this Foundry building. At the time when the city got it, Bob Healy famously said, when he heard this was being given to the city, he said, "This is going to be a problem." And what he meant was that everybody's going to start fighting over it.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So some years ago, I remember Councillor Chung was very much trying to get his sort of vision for it. I think there was a change.
So this has been a long time in the process then.
Councillor Toomey sort of had his vision for it.
Okay.
Oh yes, it's like 5 years or something.
So before some of these councillors were even on.
Yeah, and then even I think when Councillor Mazin was first running, some of his people were sort of gung-ho for the Foundry.
Yeah.
So they had a particular vision that I think was a little more arts-oriented.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of batted around for a while. And anyway, so they finally came up with the cost estimates for what the redevelopment of the Foundry building for community use. But there's sort of an understanding that it can't just become a cash sink that's just soaking.
Who's going to pay for that?
Right. So they had to come up with a plan where it would be economically sustainable.
Right.
Which meant having some of the use be sort of for
commercially or rented out. Yeah.
And some for arts, STEM, STEAM, makerspace, this kinds of stuff. I think and it was a very good idea actually, was to sort of find a way of collaborating both of them. I think in a way that's probably why this Cambridge Innovation Center, coupled with Graffito, got a partnership because they've actually built something like this, called District Hall in Boston. So they at least have some experience in this. Now I couldn't quite figure out what the ferocity of the objections were about.
All right, I did listen to the presentation, and I guess the community, they're not going to have a dedicated space. So they can just go in and out when they want. It's going to be managed by whoever manages that building, how much time they get to use it.
Right.
And that I think what people were upset about was it seemed like that whoever can pay the most is going to get the most use. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's more of the issue.
Yeah.
That it's not a dedicated thing, and it's not enough space.
I think I told you a story about when I was a graduate student for a time at Boston University.
Yeah.
One of my jobs was I was sort of the substitute lecturer for a big calculus course with like 400 students.
Wow.
And where were the lectures? Well,
you mentioned at the Nickelodeon.
The Nickelodeon Theater on Cummington Street in Boston. Is on part of the BU complex over there. Many people may not know this, but the Nickelodeon Theater was in fact a movie theater beginning with the afternoon matinees in through the evenings. Yeah. But right below the screens, there was a curtain, and if you pull the curtain aside, there were chalkboards. I know those chalkboards because I taught in those. I worked that theater.
Did you stay for the movie?
No, I never stayed for the movies. And so it was a perfect coming together of a certain time of day when academic uses tend to be very intensely toward morning hours, like before noon.
Yeah.
That's when almost all big lectures tend to happen.
Right.
And nobody would ever have a movie playing at 9 a.m., right?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's quite comparable because there's innovation. I mean, people are doing it all hours.
I agree.
They're like innovating.
Right,
like,
but I'm just saying, the notion of having shared space
yes.
is actually a great efficiency. And I think I was reading some of the write-up in here, they sort of said that they actually, by design, wanted to have a certain amount of intermingling of the innovative people from Kendall and the Cambridge people, the young people particularly, I hope.
Right.
And actually have a lot of actual interaction.
What it comes down to is really it's the space, but it's the personnel they hire and what the vision of the personnel is going to be.
Right, and
someone has to manage this space.
And that really isn't settled. I mean, but
you could have input into that.
Right.
Like, what is your vision for integrating these different communities?
Now, they may not have said this so explicitly, but just reading between the lines, you could sort of say that I'd have to say there were a few city councilors who would have been perfectly comfortable with the idea of the city basically dropping millions and millions of dollars into this building every year just to sustain it, as if they can in fact buy exclusive use of like a performance space.
But where are they going to get that money?
Taxpayers?
No.
Well, that's where it comes from. If the city were to be basically assigning several $million every year toward this, as opposed to have it be self-sustaining, then that's exactly where it would have to come from.
Is there any model for that in this city? Does the city fully operate anything like that? I'm just curious. Do you know of?
Not sure. I mean, we have youth centers.
Right, but that's out of the community development budget, or
human services programs
primarily. Right, they run programs for kids, and they're not like 24/7 places, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you're right, I don't know what the model is. Do people rent that to use the facilities? Maybe. Yes, actually, I think you can have a wedding or something.
One of the more interesting parts of the conversation that was taking place, I think it was a year, maybe even 2 years ago, when this first was really, really getting pushed. Really, it was 2 years ago. Was people say, well, what kind of uses would we want? And some people, like Dennis Carlone was saying, really like the idea of there being daycare facilities and things like that, community school programs and whatever. I think the notion about how the community school programs patch into things like this.
You have to be near a school to do that. Community schools, kind of.
Yeah, because that was the original model. But the point is that the services that community school programs provide could be or maybe should be similar to what's being proposed here in an evolving world.
Like a multi-use building.
Yeah. So I think the one discussion.
That's what churches have done.
Yeah, one discussion that should have had a lot more airtime. Was not last night, but just for the last couple of years, was rethinking how we do community school programs. Together with what we do within the school buildings themselves. Just to kind of have them all work together like a well-oiled machine. I'm not so sure that conversation is had. Now, maybe I'm not listening in on everything that happens in every department.
Right.
But when this whole discussion about what's going to happen with the Foundry takes place, I really want to hear elected officials and city employees say what is going to happen with the Foundry in conjunction with the schools, in conjunction with other community school programs. I mean, where the Foundry building is, there's other school buildings nearby. There are things that should be happening or could be happening kind of mutually here. This notion that these are all standalone projects, like the Foundry is going to be the be-all, end-all, to me is really short-sighted. So I want to see a little bit more of that conversation. But anyway, it got a little bit contentious. I think Councilman Mazin perhaps more so than others. But the best, I think the best comment, the most enthusiastic one was, I have a very lukewarm reaction to this. I think it was Councilor Devereaux. But
Carlone?
I'm not even. I think they both did. So it wasn't super well received, but ultimately.
Mark McGovern too.
Yeah. But how much of this is just political and how much of this is real? Ultimately, now the manager's got the message. He's got to execute a lease. Then the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority executes a sublease, whatever that all means. And then something will happen. So now everybody knows where they stand, and something will happen. But
so who develops it physically? The city money?
there's a bunch of startup money that comes from, I think, through the Cambridge, money that was put into a fund of the redevelopment.
Okay, so that's gonna,
The city
I heard some
chunked a
figure
bunch of money
$16
in.
million, is that
Yeah, I
to
forget what the
develop it?
original amount was less than that, but the thing is that
It's
that's
basically a shell, it needs a lot
yeah.
of,
So that's sort of get it started, but then sustaining
and the
it.
program, that's all
So
to these people
so they
that
need to
have
generate
brought
some
in.
rental to
Right.
actually keep it sustained.
Yeah,
So
okay.
anyway,
well,
it'll be interesting. It's not like it can refer to a committee exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they may have referred it to for discussion, maybe with neighborhood long-term planning. I'm not sure. But the point
They have to
is
get held
that
into
they
the-
don't have authority over it anymore. So all they can do is discuss, right? But discuss is good. We like to discuss, right? Now, there were a bunch of other things happened of some significance. Let me do one which is actually arguably was the biggest agenda item, but nobody could really know it yet.
Were you doing it last night?
Yeah.
Was I sleeping at that point? I don't know.
You might have been. You might have been. It came up late. It was, I'll just read it here. It was a communication from Mr. Rossi relative to a report regarding the classification of commercial land use and recommendation study.
Yeah.
Now, let me just say and I'm not the world's expert in this, but as Jeff Roberts from the Community Development Department, he's our current zoning pro, laid out. It says much of the language about uses, the so-called use tables in especially commercial zones around the city, was originally drafted in 1961.
Wow.
And some of them are almost kind of funny to read.
Yeah.
To sort of see what was being regulated then and what's not being regulated. There have been lots of modifications and amendments, and I'll tell you, as a sort of a big booster of Central Square, we sort of live under things like the fast food cap.
Right.
Even though most rational people that I know of feel that that's really outdated and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So they need to redefine some of the terms, redefine the rules.
Is that part of what this is?
Not specifically, but the thing is that, I mean, I remember we were on the Central Square Advisory Committee asked to opine on the fact that there was a dental office wanted to open up on the storefront in Central Square.
Okay.
And this is apparently not permitted. And I thought, what? Are you joking? It's a dentist. Well, there is, because we said, sure, we think it's a good thing, and then they went and they had to get, I think, to the a variance to allow it.
Okay.
But now I'm not saying maybe I don't know all about this.
Yeah.
But I don't see why dental offices should not be in the list of uses by right in Central Square.
Yeah.
But there was, as part of the Central Square and Kendall Square studies in recent years, there was a lot of good thought went into possibly replacing the concept of fad food cap with something called a formula business ordinance that would basically restrict
like a chain.
Big chains, big banks, whatever. It doesn't prohibit them, but it does put some limitations on them. Originally, when the fast food cap, it was because people felt that the McDonald's and Burger Kings were all going to come swooping in.
Burger King's gone. The only thing we have left is McDonald's, I think.
Right.
That's of that ilk.
Right, but there are a lot of other things which are arguably fast food establishments that are essentially...
I want to see Spike's Junkyard Hot Dogs. There's
same
only
here.
One now.
I think every...
Gone in Somerville, gone in Boston,
every
and I know
major
the guy.
square should have a late
We don't
night
have a
hot
decent
dog stand.
hot dog place. We
It
don't.
ain't right. It just ain't right.
It is.
Yeah.
And actually, I was thinking about that pizza.
We've got 9 city councils, and you can't get us a single hot dog stand.
Can you mention a pizza? We don't have Otto's Pizza here. We don't have Upper Crust. We don't have any good pizza places.
No,
we can get a slice.
We got a lot of shishi, upper crusty
Vegetarian,
stuff. Vegetarian,
vegan,
no gluten. Look, sometimes you just want a hot dog.
Yeah.
Right?
I did check out Mainly Burgers. It's okay.
Yeah, it's
They got rid of the TV though. I think
we don't have
a bad
Nick's
thing.
Beef and Beer. We don't have the Tasty. A lot of the places that we just regular.
Well, you have the Field, which is
the Field.
sort of an
Yeah.
experience.
Well, yeah.
The Tavern isn't bad.
Yeah. Anyway, so that item was
so that kind of was too big to deal with.
too big to deal with, but presumably now this will get.
But I saw it also in some other part of the agenda, and I don't remember where.
Right. Well, we'll see.
It was either a policy order or something.
But that right. Well, there was another order that we've dealt specifically with the Harvard Square. It was
the kiosk.
Yeah, well, not specifically the kiosk, but the thing is that
George.
there was the right before us right now is the Curious George storefront. They want to move them out, basically kick everybody out of the building.
Yeah.
and turn it into an escalator going upstairs.
And Harvard owns that. Yes?
No.
They don't own that corner?
I think no, they don't.
But we don't own it.
We don't own it. It's privately owned. So
Okay.
it's the place where Urban Outfitters sort of has two frontages on either side facing
That
both
whole
gravel.
building? That's huge.
Well, it doesn't go the whole block, but
that's pretty big.
It's
Yeah.
sizable, and people are characterizing it as they're trying to turn Harvard Square into a big mall, and that's coming in conjunction with some of the discussion, if you want to call it that, about the kiosk. A lot of misinformation, quite frankly,
Yeah,
about the kiosk.
kiosk is separate.
It's
that
totally
you
separate.
have control over,
Totally
right?
separate.
Yeah.
But I don't know, we're having sort of like
Yeah.
kind of a delayed nostalgia freak out
Well,
or something.
curious,
Yeah.
yeah. Meanwhile, there's a
But-
pricey cupcake place right next
The
there.
bigger problem is that some predatory landlords, to be
Yeah.
quite honest, are driving, whenever a long-term lease comes up, they're
Yeah.
asking for triple the rent or
Right.
more, and they're driving people
Crazy.
out, and
Yeah.
it's really sad and unfortunate.
And we have no control over that, right?
Now, the rhetoric about the Curious George building is interesting. Like, I think, personally, if you
Yeah.
moved Curious George and just moved around the corner, you'd still have Curious George. So, the fact that the front might be used differently, I don't see that
What
as
do you
a
mean? I
problem.
thought he's leaving Curious George.
He is.
Oh.
Right, but the thing is that, to me, the problem is that he's leaving. It's not that they're going to take that space and use it as an escalator up.
Right. Right.
For that, but anyway, it's turning into a big brouhaha. It is a little interesting to hear the rhetoric because, from my point of view, Urban Outfitters felt like a mall always.
And that's a national.
That's a big chain.
Yeah.
So
I like it, but it is a national.
Yeah. So, but they want to basically build up and have a kind of glassed-in third or fourth story on there that would be accessible. Maybe with multiple vendors that would be kind of
Is that allowed
mall-like.
zoning-wise to have another layer up there? Another story?
Not 100% sure, but probably yes, but it would still need variances or special permits for other
Imagine the
reasons.
construction delays.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So anyway, so it's a big controversy, and I think it was a pretty good move. It was from Councilors Carlone and someone, maybe one or two others, basically to say, there was when the Reed block got demolished, which is where the Tasty was, and turned into what it is now.
Oh, right.
There was a Harvard Square, I don't know what's it called, conservation district or preservation was set up, and then 5 years later there was kind of a review, and then it's another 11 years have passed, and there's supposed to be regular reviews. So the question is like, well, maybe it's time to update that ordinance to maybe take a firmer look at how Harvard Square shakes out. The problem is that this is still American. You can't just restrain trade and say, well, we're only going to allow you to do business here because we like Curious George and we don't allow, we don't want this to be here.
But
you
the
really
bottom
can't
line,
do
it's
that.
privately owned, so there's just so much.
It's privately owned, and you can, as Ken Reeves used to.
Zoning you can fool around with, but that's it, right?
Ken Reeves, who was a pretty smart guy as the city council, he used to always say zoning is more of an art than a science, and it's ultimately a very blunt instrument for trying to get what you want.
It's used politically when it really, because it's the only thing they have.
Yeah.
Right?
But I'll tell you, it's again, it's sort of part of the our revolution moment we're in now. There's a lot more people rhetorically talking about just, well, we're going to make this so, make that so.
I don't know.
I think there are
very little in Harvard Square that I go to.
There are constitutional reasons why you can't just do everything you please. But
do you shop in Harvard Square?
I don't think I shop in Harvard.
Not shop or just even hang out there.
I used to when I knew all this. I knew a lot of the street performers. They were my friends.
Oh.
And I used to hang out there at night. To be perfectly honest, my friend Mike and I would sometimes buy a couple of 6-packs and brown bag it in Harvard Square.
Wow, I don't think you're doing that.
And go jumping in the river later on.
Okay, that's a long time ago.
That was a while ago. But people shouldn't just be doing planning based on their own personal sense of nostalgia either.
No.
Like I've been saying about the Harvard Square kiosk, that I think that the best use would be as people hate it, but I love it as if it was a lunch counter, like a hot dog stand, where you can watch Red Sox games on one end of it, right?
Instead of hanging out at Cordulo's, is that still there? Where
no,
people would
it
sit
isn't.
in the
But
chairs
no, and that's where I get the idea.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great thing. Now,
all right.
Another item of some interest, too, are sort of bike and traffic related.
Oh yeah, because there were several.
And we won't hit everyone in here, but the state legislature recently passed enabling legislation that gave authority.
That was a good thing.
It gave authority to cities and towns to regulate, rather than go with the 30 miles per hour for thickly settled zones or thickly settled areas as a speed limit for motor vehicles. They gave the authority of cities to lower it to 25 miles per hour and to 20 miles per hour in so-called designated safety zones.
Okay.
Now, I always thought safety zones would mean something like in the heart of Harvard Square or something. But apparently Boston and now Cambridge are just sort of jumping at this and doing what, in my opinion, is a little bit short-sighted of just wanting to declare the entire city to be a 20 mile per hour zone.
But wait, but I thought you said there's 25.
Well, what they want to do is they want to declare the entire city to be a safety zone.
I didn't hear them saying that.
That's what it says in the order.
Oh.
And I think that's a little wrong-headed. I had a bit of an email interchange with Senator Brownsberger about this a while ago, or at least I kind of commented on his website where he has a discussion about this. There are a lot of streets, and we actually talked about this on a previous program, like a street that's relatively narrow that's parked on both sides, where if you were to go down 30 miles an hour and anybody stepped out between cars, he's toast.
Yeah.
Where some streets like that could or should properly be 20, 25 miles per hour. But there are a lot of streets where it should be 25 miles per hour. And there are even some, I think, you may disagree.
Yeah, I do.
Where, like, if it's the center lane of Mass Ave or something, 30 miles per hour. 30 miles per hour is not fast, but it's very fast if you're
fast.
Well, if you're in proximity with pedestrians.
But we have so much congestion in most of Cambridge between bikes and pedestrians and skaters and cars. I think 25 is...
25 I could live with. I rarely go above 25 in town
and
anyway.
20 around schools. And
right,
but
15, but they want to make it 20 everywhere, which struck me as sort of like what suburban district, city council. That's what they were voting last night.
What order was that?
There were two different orders. Right. One was order number 4, just said lower to 20.
Okay.
And order number 14 was a little more thoughtful and asked, how do we go about lowering our speed limits and what kind of timeline?
Okay.
Basically, it didn't want to jump the gun. So now I don't remember exactly how this got settled last night here, but
but it said, and to lower the speed in all office and business zones to 25. So that number 4 does not say everywhere 20.
Safety zones would be the entire city is what they're proposing.
Residential zones, oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's not Central Square, that's not Kendall Square.
I know.
No, but so 25 in those others.
No, 20, because they want to make the whole city a safety zone except for the commercial zones.
Yeah, but then...
Every residential street.
Office and business zones is a lot of Cambridge.
I live on Broadway, which is...
That's not a business zone, it's commercially zoned.
Broadway, only where I happen to live, is a mixed residential commercial zone.
You also have a school across the street, though.
Right, so then it should be, but only during school hours, right?
Well, but Central Square, Kendall, Porter.
But many of these places, 25 is, I think, a pretty right number.
Right.
And the other thing is, and everybody, if you lower the speed limit down to 15 or 20 miles an hour, and people just say, well, this is ridiculous, and everybody will be so routinely blowing past the limits that they'll lose all meaning entirely.
Right, but they'll blow past maybe to 25 if it's
I think if you make it
30 to 35.
If you establish a serious speed limit,
I think slower is better.
But not universally. So anyway, so that was one. But the one thing I actually found the most contentious at the end was, remember it was a few years ago, I think it was Councilor Van Buzicum was from wanting to increase the permit parking fee, right? It used to be
2013. They actually did increase.
I remember it was like $4. It was really a formality, and then it became $8. And then they increased it to 20 with a plan to get pop it to 25.
Yeah, right.
And that was in 2013 is when it was last risen. So now there's an order from Councilors Devereaux and Mazin that want to, they say, gradually increase the parking permit fee. They don't specifically say, but in the rhetoric last night, Councilor Mazin explicitly said he would like to quadruple it to 100.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
And
100.
Councilor Devereaux was quite clear that Rome is burning, is the phrase she used.
Yeah, I heard that. I wrote that down.
And that, it was sort of time to kind of teach a lesson, she didn't say it exactly that way, to people who had misgivings about removing parking along streets like Pearl Street in order to accommodate a bike lane, right? So I thought there was a kind of almost a military quality to this, like a militant
But I thought her
quality.
thing was her amendment, which I wasn't sure what it got attached to, was about that some of the streets around, I guess especially
She
in her
wanted
area,
to, correctly, they were DCR roads
right,
like
and
Memorial
they
Drive.
need to be involved.
Right, and I totally agree with that amendment. Fresh Pond Parkway, where it's that twisty, windy
Right.
portion.
Terrible.
There's no way people should be driving more than 25 miles per hour on that.
Yeah.
And so she put that in, asked that as a
that
request.
was a separate issue, right?
The
Okay.
City Council has no authority over it, they can request it. That's right, that should be 25.
But the permits also, wasn't there some suggestion that there should be a certain percentage increase every year rather than one incrementally?
Well, I mean, it sort of formally says that, but you will sort of see where this goes.
I like Toomey's comment. Did you hear that about if you have a $50,000 car, you should pay more?
But you do. See, now here's one point here's the truth, is that
What?
in all that
Oh, you have
somewhat
excise tax
ridiculous, exactly.
Oh, you're right.
Your excise tax, you pay $25 per
I know that.
$1,000
I bought a new car for the first time. I
valuation.
said, what?
So you might
That's a
get
lot
hit
of money.
with an excise tax of
Yeah.
400 something bucks your first year
Yes.
or more,
Yes.
and then it goes down
It
to like
does.
250, whatever.
So they do get you for that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the silliness of this order is that it made it out as though the sole
Reason people drive is to have the cheap parking.
right, or that the sole method of funding some of these programs around the city, is from the funds generated from this. The total money generated from the park fees is a pittance compared to what the city actually spends. So to conflate these two was kind of ridiculous. But anyway, it was interesting, and we'll see how it plays out. Historically, I remember times when they wanted to divvy the city up into different zones.
I was going to just suggest that would be very radical and say you could only park in
Last time that was proposed, it was defeated 8-0.
Right.
And that's only because somebody, I think, was either scared or sick.
Yeah, that would be very contentious.
Well, yeah, I mean, I live in mid-Cambridge, and what this says is I wouldn't be allowed to park in
else,
East Cambridge,
Well,
so
I
I
can
think
see that going that
we're
way,
one
though.
city, they should be one city, and honestly, the fee is really more of a formality to like a processing fee, and let's just keep it that way. So
Okay.
anyway, a lot more we could talk about.
Next week will be another meeting, and we'll comment
see you
on
then.
that.
All right, that's just another issue of Cambridge Inside Out.